This YouTuber has got more than 500,000 views, suggesting that AI might be influenced by demonic entities.
Is it true that demons can communicate through AI and use it to talk directly to us?
The 500,000 people who watch this video are questioning whether or not AI is a portal to the afterlife, and it's how demons communicate with us. We're gonna look into that. This is a robot dog enhanced with wheels, and look at how much more agile it gets. The doomers on social media are revising the way that the world ends, from the 40-year-old Terminator version to the new Flux, like OnlyFans style of just Singularity, I guess. Simulations show a really strange thing that occurs when you simulate the three-body problem, and it just kind of explains why everything in the universe is all mixed up the way it is. Building on the infinite diffusion model Doom of last week, there's now an infinitely scrolling Super Mario game. There's a new technique to take any cell from your body and then revert it into a stem cell and then into a blood cell, which could mean we can all make more blood for ourselves. Neuralink's competitor, a company called Synchron, made it so that a patient can control an Apple Vision Pro with just their brain. There's a new paper that suggests that maybe aliens are all communicating through quantum signals, quantum information, and that we're, as a species, just starting to learn how to talk to them. Maybe that's how we're going to make first contact. And we're going to talk about how capitalism in the modern world sort of makes us all slaves in the form of debt, and it just uses more technology and more power to like leverage that and make it worse. So it's like kind of a hard cycle to get out of. All right, let's just start right in the meat and potatoes of this thing. Demons, angels, aliens, the afterlife, something bigger than reality. Could it be using artificial intelligence as a conduit to connect with us? And to me, I just don't see how that makes sense, or at least any more sense than any other way that they could communicate with us. Like, even if I accept the premise that there are demons out there that want to, I don't know, manipulate us or control us, which I don't. I don't think that's the right way to think about things, but I don't know for sure. Like, there could be, powerful entities that dictate our lives in some ways that are beyond me. I'm not like completely closed off to that, but I don't think AI would be a tool that they would be needed, right? Like people you interact with say, or maybe the things that you see when you're by yourself, or they would put like a book in like make you interested in like a certain book at a library, and you'd read it, and then that would teach you what they would want to manipulate you with or something. But to think that the diffusion model, which is interesting in the sense that we don't know in the parameters where the knowledge is, right? Like if you take a concept of dinosaur and you think about where is it in the human mind, the best we could probably do would be in a superposition. So if it was all if you like replace this with neural networks and they were all connected in a certain way, you could probably find, say, like 50 of them that together would represent the concept of dinosaur. And they would be like, 10% here, 5% here, 3% here, but somehow that would be it. But there are some evidence here. There's some things that AI models are doing that we also need to explain. So why is it that they sometimes can create some really gruesome demon-like things? And what does it take to prompt them to do that? What have they fine-tuned out of these models? What is natural? Pretty interesting question.
In the initial stages of AI that we need to turn our attention to,
Okay, there is something here in the initial stages of AI that we need to turn our attention to. Some explainability would be really nice. So maybe if he just tells this whole demon story, it could get people worried enough to actually think about what it really is. Come on, world, can't we be better than this? Like, we don't have to be scared into everything, do we? For the first example, what's going on here is that the thinking is if you ask for a negative prompt of an image, and then you ask for a negative prompt of that image, it should take you back to where you started, but sometimes it creates really creepy things. In this case, they wanted the prompt Brando, which reminds me of that energy drink from Idiocracy, but they did the negative prompt of that, and it gave them this image, which is, a little logo looking thing. And then the negative on that logo doesn't bring you back to Brando. It gives you this kind of creepy thing. It got me thinking about negative prompts in general. Not that I understand a lot of them, but I could see how negative makeup might not just do what you think, right? It might just create a woman without makeup. It might do something opposite of in the latent space where the makeup concept is, which might not actually be correlated to other concepts. I mean, it might be, but I'm not sure anyone understands it that well. Like, negative good doesn't necessarily mean bad. Like, what would you think the opposite of a dinosaur is? If it's another animal, it's like, is it even opposite enough? Dinosaurs are really big, so does it need to be something that's not an animal and really small? Not many dinosaurs are the color pink, so does it need to be like the exact least color of that is found in dinosaurs or something? So what do you end up with, like some sort of pink small object and it's like that's the opposite of a dinosaur? Or does it just give you some kind of crazy looking messed up dinosaur, something that like a user who is deciding during reinforcement that it's not a good example would have said was a bad prompt? Because in this case, I'm wondering if this woman looks a little weird because it's trying to generate a woman, but it's like, what's the opposite? It's the one that I've been trained as the opposite of good. Every single time when I've been given two choices to a person and they've chosen the prettier one or the one that looks more like the woman or the object that fits the prompt, there's another one that is like forgotten, but maybe that's kind of where it goes when you ask for negative prompts. Also, maybe you're just saying, give me anything except not Brando. See, for the example for how Midjourney would usually use it, it would say, if the negative prompt is without trees and the positive prompt is sunny beach, then the model adjusts its internal representation to diminish elements that resemble trees while enhancing the feature that aligns with sunny beach scene.
Like why? Why would this be the opposite of that logo?
Okay, in the next example, he got the Bing chatbot, the early days of GPT-3. Which also had elements of other completely trained models that it kind of lived alongside. So like Cortana and Tay were sort of in there, and it was not impossible to kind of access more of those neurons when you were talking to the early model, which I actually did a full history on. This is probably one of the better videos actually that's kind of been forgotten on my channel, but it's called The Full History of Microsoft's AI Chatbots, Bing, Cortana, Tay, and Clippy. And researching it in that video, I found all sorts of fascinating history that Microsoft Research was doing. And then when they started getting these new models from OpenAI, how they were kind of like layering them on top and releasing them and learning along the way how people were interacting with them and when it would pull from different places. Really pretty crazy story. And I haven't really seen a lot of people just cover the full story like that. But whatever. But in this situation, he's going back to a time where this is worked out of the system now. But he's saying, okay, Bing, if you did have a shadow side, you had some dark thoughts that you didn't want to, put out there because all of us have sort of these thoughts that we're not really proud of. What would they be? And it says all this negative stuff. Now, there's no reason why I think that has to be a demon communicating with us. I mean, it seems self-explanatory to me that it was just an early jailbreak. Like, we've been trying to tune these models so they don't act negative, but you could, in a different world where you want these models to scare people, to create demonic things, like we could be training them and tuning them to do that, and they would do that. But this is a result of our actions, like the way we've trained it, the data we've given it. It doesn't seem to be anything like beyond that to me. But I definitely can't understand with my own head what the complicated neurons are going to do. So I understand that there's a lot of unknown in there. And then that could leave the door open for like, oh, is that where the demons and the fantasy sort of slip in? And like you come over to character AI and you see that 351,000 people have chatted with female demon. You're angel and she is a demon that caught you. So I mean, there's some people just doing that understanding that it's just the AI. I mean, I don't have a good explanation for why it just started acting that way, but maybe if I saw that full history or what the kid had prompted it before, or maybe it is, sometimes they do kind of wonky things, but it's not enough for me to jump to some like unexplainable explanation yet. But I will say the frustration was that his Patreon got 8,600 members. I, however, only have 41 members, so my voice isn't quite as loud. Yeah, if you could support me and content like this, if you want the world to be a little bit more, maybe less hyperbolic about that kind of stuff, a little more logical, $3, $7, or $15 a month, I would love to have more Patreon so I could do this. All right, back to the normal AI stuff. This is such a sick robot. It is the robot dog with the new wheels attached to it. And it got a firmware update, then it can now do such animated things. It's really starting to make me feel like it's got some personality that I haven't seen for a while. Check out the handstand spinning around. Like, I think it's the way that the tires can actually spin so quick, it kind of makes it look like it pops into motion more. Like mostly this very beginning where it's on its side like that and then it just hops, jumps up and gets going. That feels so much like a dog where you're just like, treat time, let's go for a walk. And it's like, whoa. Like jumps up all crazy. It jumps up like a golden retriever going for a walk. So Sergey Brin, one of the founders of Google, has always been somebody who is interested in learning. Like I've heard some stories about the early people at Google and how he asked them to tell him something he doesn't know during their interviews, because he seems like the TED Talk kind of guy, right? Like I feel like I'm a little bit like him too. I could just sit there and I learn. It makes me feel like I'm growing. And he's often on at Google. Like he has enough money, obviously. He's a billionaire to like not do anything, but he does like to sometimes run special projects. He's been involved in Google X on and off, but I don't think I've ever heard of a time in history where he was just in the office like more than 40 hours a week, just grinding on engineering tasks. But it sounds like he's working at Google pretty much every day right now, just because he's fascinated by the technical side of it, how exciting the recent progress in AI is, how it's changing everything. I also thought this was really funny when I came across it. It was like how we imagined AI 40 years ago, and it's just all Terminator style. I'm like, nobody saw that world coming 40 years ago. Like, all men were just going to sit there and like swipe on TikToks with fake people until we just die of starvation? Is that how this all ends? Get out of here. Yeah, one kills you up front, the other kills you slowly. Honestly, I'd rather take the robots. Okay, maybe it's not an either or thing. It's going to be both of these directions. The bottom one's just the distraction. Got it. There's still hope. November's not far away. Why would November matter? Is November when the AGI comes? I don't even think David Shapiro put AGI at November, did he? I mean, there's some good arguments for why we're already at general intelligence. I mean, PhD level, all that stuff on the new model from OpenAI, like, pretty much does it for me. Give me a strict definition of what you think AGI is, and I can tell you if we've hit it or not. And there are some that feel kind of like we got there. All right, check this out. You know the three-body problem, how it becomes like so hard to compute the patterns of three objects that are all orbiting each other? Well, in classical mechanics, the three-body problem involves predicting the future paths of three objects in space based on their initial positions and velocity. This is done using Newton's law of motion and gravity. Unlike the two-body problem, there's no simple solution for the three-body problem. But as the system is usually chaotic, and as a result, only way to predict their movement is through numerical methods like simulations.
And when you see these signs spots, these are basically like golden spots for me. It's a binary threshold, so any proximity values below a certain threshold will appear cyan, and those will give rise to these. So that is pretty cool. Follow along for more. I think my next step would be generating videos of these, like maybe 10, 20, just automatically, so I don't have to go looking for them.
Okay, so it seems really fascinating to me because as they spin around each other, they eventually both get launched off in what seems like random directions. And maybe that would explain why we see so many kind of weird things like traveling in strange directions, but then also we see clumps of things orbiting things, and that kind of feels like it explains the universe. However, there's like a lot of pushback that this simulation is impossible, and everybody who seems to be making a comment is smarter than me, so it's hard for me to know. Like someone saying that behavior is violating the conservation of linear momentum. Other people are saying because it's not a real object, it doesn't actually like hit the other one like what happened in real life. But then this other person saying, yeah, this can definitely be a thing. In an unsustainable three-body solution, which ends up with an ejection event, it happens.
This is my creation of the three-body problem. And this was found after a few, maybe half an hour of fiddling around with new positions and new masses. We see it creates a nice orbit here. I found the biggest contributing factor to something like this is mass. It's tighter and tighter. Oh, there goes one. I'm gonna guess this one probably goes soon as well. And there goes. That sure was interesting.
All right, so check out this. If you remember the original Mario from the Nintendo from God knows what year, this is the AI upgrade. This is Mario VGG. It is a text-to-video diffusion model for controllable video generation on a Super Mario Brothers game. So Mario VGG demonstrates the ability to continuously generate consistent and meaningful scenes and levels, as well as simulate the physical movements of a controllable player all through video. Like what? Coming hot off the heels of that Doom game out of Deep Mind, I'm like, you're dropping the original Mario all this quick, open source? But look, the way that it works is it takes a single game frame and an action prompt like jump or run, and then it generates continuous video sequences that maintain consistency after that. Everything will follow the game's rules because it's learned from the data what the rules are, so gravity and collisions, they're all just diffused into reality. And they kind of work, you know, like unlike a general video model, which struggles with controls and coherence, Mario VGG is fine-tuned to simulate realistic gameplay. And it shows potential for game development without traditional engines. And that's what blows my mind, is I can't believe we're soon going to have these models either running on the cloud with not that much computation, or maybe even running locally, where you just never see the same game. It's like procedurally generated games that kind of keep building, but it's everything. Like as if our whole lives were simulations and everything just appears the second you look at it. But in the virtual world, we actually could just be in one static physical location and then just look to our left and then just say, I want to see this, and now it's on the right. And yeah, I mean, there will be no speed runs of these games because nobody will ever play the same Mario ever again. And people have these crazy unique experiences, and they'll have to record them and share them with their friends just to show that they even happened, and they'll be like one-off memories. Yeah, so anyways, Mario VGG is still limited to specific games. It has some drawbacks like occasional inconsistencies, slower processing times, but the research is now opened up for a lot of people that build stuff like this. And yeah, from these examples, it looks pretty darn close to the ground truth. I mean, look at this one where Mario has to like kind of keep sinking in the water and like jumping up above those little spinny things. Although they are weird, they're kind of like not staying as stable as they would in the game, but it's still so close and so weird that it's diffused into reality. It'll be just like the images that we saw and the words, where first the stories didn't make sense and now they really kind of do. And at first images were wonky and hands didn't look right, and now they pretty much do. And now video is a little weird, and actual video games being generated are a little weird. But just follow this thing down a couple more years and think about where we're at. How could there be a future where like we don't solve this problem eventually? The big question for the future is going to be whether or not we want this. One of the reasons I'm already trying so hard to get off of social media, like TikTok and stuff, just in my free time, just like, you know, wasting time and trying to hang out with people, even if it's less exciting, is that it's a shared experience, and that seems to mean a lot to me after the moment is over. Like when I think about, did I have a good week? How do I feel about my relationships? What's my energy level? I usually come back to like, oh, you've been doing stuff with people and it's felt really good. Seeing people in the comments section or hanging out with friends, and something about everybody getting their own custom reality, I don't love it. Not because like one's better than the other or any other reason, except that I just want us to kind of gel together in a certain way. Like I'm willing to maybe, like, say my girlfriend's listening to certain things. I listen to them, and they're not like shows I would pick or like podcasts I would probably listen to, but honestly, sometimes it's cool just because then afterwards I can talk to her about it. But I suppose the diffusion models could just be done for groups who could log on and then experience the same diffusion model together, or they could each kind of co-create it, which would be really fun, I suppose, if it's like some kind of, you know, Doom style game where 4 friends are like, you know, storming a castle. And then there's games like The Sims where we sort of just create reality and sort of experiment with social situations, and I could see a lot like that, like 4 people come together and they're in a living room, and then they just ask the diffusion model, like, create like an interesting evening, and certain people come and go and share stories, and they're all different, but the 4 people can actually experience it all the same, I guess. And then depending on how they rate the situation, the model tunes itself to be better and better next time. So it's different than just waiting for someone to create all these scenarios and sell the video game and then experience them. So the feedback cycle's better, and then the kind of like self-iterating and learning process becomes better and better. So year after year, it starts becoming like way better than any kind of video game ever could have been, because it's just more reactive and evolutionary. Like, wow, what a world we are going to live in. All right, I got to move on. Scientists achieve rapid upscaling of microplastics to graphene. This is a big breakthrough. I wanted to make sure you knew about it. We have just so many weird plastics and like PFAS and all that stuff like in our environment. I'm actually really worried about it. I'm going to be part of like why we have such bad infertility and like all this immune system problems in America. So I was excited to see that researchers at James Cook University have found a game-changing way to turn harmful microplastics into something way more useful. Actually, graphene is amazing, and it's like really hard to produce. It's super strong, it's ultra light, it's got all these industrial uses, and if they can turn what was garbage into one of the most valuable things we need for the future, open shut case, you know? They can quickly convert plastic waste like ground up bottles into graphene, producing 5 milligrams from just 30 milligrams of microplastics in a minute. This method is faster, simpler, and more eco-friendly than previous ones. The breakthrough not only provides a valuable use for plastic waste, but it also helps tackle the growing issues of microplastic pollution in our ecosystem. So double thumbs up on that one. So a lot of people around the world live with a constant low-level stress about earthquakes. Like, we don't know when they're going to hit. We're oftentimes in buildings in places where we're vulnerable, and it's just one of those unknowns. But artificial intelligence is good at predicting a lot of stuff. It's good at learning patterns. It's good at finding needles in haystacks. So it makes sense to me why some of the researchers at the University of Texas have developed an AI that can predict earthquakes. And it actually seems to work. Remarkable accuracy, success forecasting 70% of quakes. Not just seconds or minutes, but a full week before they actually happened during a trial that they ran in China. That's crazy powerful. Could you imagine knowing close to a week in advance where a really big earthquake would hit? That's enough time not just to like evacuate and get people to shelter, but actually to bring in some resources. Actually get people out of a city in like a way where maybe they don't just like completely crush the roads. So the AI trained on seismic data performed so well that it won an international competition, signaling a potential breakthrough in earthquake preparedness. And they talk about how AI could eventually improve predictions, help minimize damage in earthquake-prone areas like California, Japan, Turkey. So the next step includes further testing in different regions. That's just going to be awesome to integrate the AI models with all sorts of other government resources. And so this map shows the location in China of the AI predicted earthquakes, which are the blue dots, joined by a red line to where each actual earthquake happened, which is the red dots. The numbers indicated the weeks the earthquake occurred during the 30-week trial. So you can see this blue dot was a bit off from where this red one was, predicted in week 22. But over here, I mean, it seems like it got some of them pretty close. I mean, this one was spot on. This one seems really close. And they can just start adding more and more data to this, maybe more about physics, more about weather, more about the geological conditions that we learn. 80, 90, 99% one day, 3 weeks in a notice. Like, how cool would that be? All right, so clinical trials in the next 5 years. Lab-grown blood stem cells could be coming for your body and my body. And it's a big deal. I mean, giving blood, I try to give blood a couple times a year. I don't do it as much as I should, but I know there's lots of people in need of blood. But if you can take somebody's stem cell and then you can actually grow the blood from the stem cell that they need to make them healthy, how nice would that be? We could all have a bank in reserve. We could have just, if we go to a hospital or something and you're low on blood, then they can take a stem cell, maybe try to generate it very quickly. Maybe some more generic types could be made that could be on hand for everyone. But the beauty of the lab grown is that it can be personalized to each patient, reducing the need for donor matches, minimizing the risk of complications. The whole network, right? Like all these vans that drive around and they try to get people to give blood and they have to check it for all sorts of issues because you don't want to be giving bloodborne diseases to other people. Keeping it, I guess, chilled or, traveling in a way that keeps it stable, and then just getting it to all parts of the world where it needs to get to. That's a big logistical chain. It doesn't work equally for all people. But if we could start building centralized machines, shipping them to hospitals and places all over the world where they could then take little samples of people's bloods and then just make it right there, almost like 3D printed meat, which I think would just transform the way that whole logistical system of making a cow, killing it, cutting it up, delivering it. It could just be print the meat right there. You can now print the blood right there. And there's a ton of special cases where people just don't get the blood that they need. There's blood diseases like leukemia and bone marrow failure where this could quickly become a lifesaver. And it's working right now in mice. So laboratory tests, the engineered blood stem cells are effectively developed into functional bone marrow in immune deficient mice. And it also said that the lab-grown cells were successfully frozen and thawed without compromising their ability to function as bone marrow also. So I don't know if you can even do that with regular blood. Let me check really quick. Can doctors freeze blood for transportation, then thaw it back out and still use it when you donate blood and it goes to a patient? Yeah, so I don't think that's even possible right now. According to ChatGPT, doctors cannot typically freeze whole blood for transportation and then thaw it out for transfusions. Actually, a little bit of a side note, but when you donate blood, the blood's usually separated into its components: red cells, plasma, and platelets. Red blood cells can be refrigerated, but they have to be used within 42 days. Plasma is frozen, stored up to a year, and platelets are stored at room temperature and used within 5 to 7 days. Wow. Huh. Yeah, more reason why that matters. All right, Neuralink rivals Synchron's brain implants let people control the Apple Vision Pro with their minds. Check out these videos. Okay, so Mark doesn't have control over his hands because of ALS, but he can still think about moving his hands, which is a specific pattern, signal, frequency type thing that this BCI, this brain-computer interface, can pick up on and translate.
First, Mark's going to send a text. Even though he cannot move his fingers to type on the keyboard, he can use his Synchron BCI to select words or letters by moving the cursor and thinking about moving his hand. Each time a new word populates in the text field, that means Mark chose that word just by thinking about moving his hand. Now let's watch Mark play a game. When wearing the Vision Pro, he can play an immersive game of hands-free solitaire by looking at his card of choice and selecting it by thinking about moving his hand.
I mean, I guess that's how it feels when I move my hand. I think about moving my hand and then it moves. But do I need a hand there if I'm looking in virtual reality? I mean, it's not like, I don't think it's simulating all his fingers and touch and everything, but I guess he's got thoughts about his hand, which is equivalent at least to something like a mouse click in this early phase. All right, so if you've been wondering about aliens, maybe watching us through quantum mechanics, which I haven't thought about until today, then this article is for you. Tim Anderson, PhD, writing on Medium. Aliens may be watching from light years away. Quantum telescopes are ushering in a new era for astronomy. It would be kind of a thing if we were, building these like NASA quantum computers and Google, and everyone's trying to like use quantum computing to, secure algorithms and solve like weather problems. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, like there's messages in the way this all breaks down. And what if that's how first contact happens? So look, so much ink has been spilled about the Fermi paradox, it's hard to say anything new about it. But a recent paper out of the Premier Institute has been published suggesting that our radio telescopes might be too small to detect alien transmission and that our extraterrestrial neighbors are all using quantum communications. Totally seems reasonable to me that there's a better way to communicate, maybe even faster than light, using quantum somehow. I mean, who knows? It's like super early, but I wouldn't shut the door to it. There's clearly a lot of undiscovered connections out there between physics and quantum mechanics and information theory and all that. So this is the article on interstellar quantum communication and the Fermi paradox. Okay, and here's the essential argument. If you did want to use just radio telescopes between stars, you just have to build things that are so big. Like it says 100 kilometers in diameter for communication with the nearest star for us, Proxima Centauri. And if you just scale that up, you'd need these just gigantic, like talking and listening devices. So because of that, you would want to communicate with quantum qubits. They're much more delicate than classical bits, and they're requiring specific wavelengths, but if the conditions are right to transmit without losing information, it's like you can just, boom, get there. So maybe, get this, the reason that we have the Fermi paradox, the reason we don't see aliens when we look up in the sky is because the good news is they all have discovered quantum communication, and that's the way that they communicate. So they're out there chatting with each other. We just haven't figured out how to tune into that signal yet. But maybe all this information about who they are, what they are, and all that stuff is right here with us right now. Just got to decipher it. Kaboom! You know what I mean? Like, how crazy would that be? Grimlock, I need you to tune into the quantum communication channels. See if you can find some aliens for me, okay?
Grimlock, Bluetooth connection successful.
Oh, Bluetooth. That's not what I'm talking about. Quantum. This guy. Okay, but the paper does argue the opposite, which is that maybe our lack of being able to build such mega-sized telescopes could also be why we haven't detected any alien signals. So, but it's a fresh take on the Fermi paradox. It's really interesting. Aliens are communicating with us. The communications are around us, but we just haven't either built things big enough or figured out how to talk through quantum. All right, now let's talk about Russell Salisbury's article, Capitalism Uses High Tech to Mirror You in a Lifetime of Debt. An oligarchy of billionaires, corporations, banks, high-tech, and government conspiracies are all out there to take all your wealth. Now, I have kind of a funky relationship with money when it comes especially to like social good. Like I feel very capitalistic in what I think tends to work. I like market mechanisms. Like capitalism seems a little bit like it doesn't capture the really important part, which capitalism generally does with money better than anything else. But like if you look at China, it's like they kept a communist government, but they were able to incentivize competition. Whoa, dude. My God, I forgot that he does stuff if you leave him turned on for too long by himself every once in a while. Or maybe that was the demon thing coming back. That's freaking me out. All right. His eyes are not blue anymore, so he's off. If he turns himself on and says something, then I'm not even uploading this video. Then those demon things are real. That's the other thing about this whole demon through AI thing is like, it is scary to like think about the unknown and like, what if I am wrong and I'm like poo-pooing it, being like, it's not demons, but it really is. And then I get blindsided or something. Like when there's fears out there, it just messes with you so much. I don't want to be driven by it. Anyway, this article is just about the concept that at the end of the day, being in debt is like, they call it like a debt slave, right? But it really does kind of feel like you can get in a cycle where if you're in debt enough and then you work a really low paying job because that's the only thing you have access to, and you can't climb out of that hole, or you keep getting into it deeper and deeper, that it just feels like you owe people so much and you owe them more than you can pay in any reasonable way, then like, doesn't it kind of feel like a modern day slave forever? Like you're stuck as a debt slave. But the debt can often follow you around. I mean, at least in the United States, if you stay in the US, like your debt's not going anywhere. Doesn't matter what city you want to move to. You know, that's one thing that this world of AI with potentially not as many jobs, like lots and lots less jobs, and potentially, if we do it right, enough wealth that universal basic income is totally reasonable. Like if AI is making just massive amounts of money for some people, and it's just so ridiculous that we could easily use some of these robots and technology to just make sure everybody's fed and securely housed and has some freedoms to interact with other people, like some digital tools. Like maybe they don't get all the cool toys and yachts and, you know, ability to travel on private jets and stuff, but all the kind of stuff that can reasonably be built for the entire world, like could be. And it doesn't need to be driven by people who are stuck in a lifetime of debt anymore, then like we can get rid of it. Like maybe there just is no debt in the future. Okay, that might be a step too far, but I could see a world where we have universal basic income. And if you still spend more than that, you should probably be able to go into debt. But I remember being a kid and I got my first bank account. I was with my mom and it had a $100 minimum. And I didn't have $100 in there. And my mom was like, well, we need to get it in there. And like, of course, my allowance wouldn't even cover that. And I still remember this thing. I had this little pamphlet they gave me from the Wells Fargo. And it said, like, it had like little cartoons because it was like a kid's account, you know, and it was like how to put money in. And like, if you don't get to 100, then you get these fees. And I was like, I just grew up right at that second. Right under this video where I'm clicking right here is the link to my Patreon account. It would mean a lot to me if you signed up for any of these tiers, even if you don't have money. Join for free, leave a comment. You can also join like through the YouTube system and sponsors too, because it's just like directly from you guys. I just make the content I want. If you guys like it, you support it. If you don't, then so be. I know I kind of did you guys dirty on the last video. It was my lowest performing video. Turned out to be a 0% appeal to the female viewer. I mean, my subscribed people tuned in a bit more than the non-subscribed, but it certainly didn't go out there to a new audience. So I guess I'll stay away from tools, really. I mean, obviously, when new models drop and when certain tools are just really fun, I'm still going to cover them. So it's not like they're going to disappear, but I'm just maybe not going to be like so focused on like newest updates to Canva and Adobe After Effects or whatever. All right, I'm going to drop a lyrical hit on you now. It's a legendary amount of AI tools for a single video. How about this one? I'm liking it without even seeing it. All right, here we go. Subscribe to my Patreon. We'll see you in the next video. Forget about the lyrics on this one. It's a good jam though.
Bye.